And I'm with the Minnie Pearl Cancer Foundation. Welcome to our second annual Healing Within event. This was originally conceived as a way to bring together different organizations that are dedicated to health, healing, and research, especially around the subject of cancer, in honor of Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So we will start our day with Dr. Oakley S speaking. He said that the subject's a little bit different than what we originally thought, but it will be, I'm sure, just as interesting and fascinating as our original speech. And then afterwards, we will have the choice of either a yoga or a Tai Chi class. And Nidra Lambert will be teaching yoga. If you raise your hand, Nidra. And Jackie Dunkel, who was here last year, will be teaching Tai Chi. And this room will be used for yoga. So when we're finished, if you could all take chairs and push them on either side of the room, she'll stay here for yoga. Tai Chi will be over in the ropes and rocks room. I want to take a minute to thank all the folks who are participating in the health fair, which will be after the yoga or Tai Chi class, and then there is a snack from Wild Oats. We've got lots of fruit and muffins and things to drink, so please stick around for that as well. I would like to thank the YMCA for hosting this event. They have allowed us to come here free of charge. I would also like to thank those who helped me plan the event, the Center for Health Services, Jackie Dunkel, Vanderbilt Ingram Cancer Center, Kathleen Donnelly was very helpful again this year, and she's right there. Wild Oats was one of our sponsors. Graffiti Indoor Advertising helped with advertising this year, so we have lots of good support. Patrick Clemens is going to speak for a minute about the foundation. We have an exciting new development this year that we want to share, and then Dr. Ray will speak after that. But before we do that, I just want to take a quick moment while I have everybody in the room, and I want to thank Dr. Ray for his help today, and I got him a little gift. Dr. Ray loves motorcycles. As a matter of fact, he showed up here today with his wife on a motorcycle. So I thought he was a history of motorcycles. And then for Nidra and Jackie, I got the books.
Can I start?
Go ahead, please start.
I'm really pleased to be here. And one of the things that my wife hates, in spite of the fact that she'll ride with me on the motorcycle, is when I walk around a lot, because she says, "Stay still." You get very nervous, but I do. I walk a lot. And so, test laid plans of mice and men and Oakley Ray often go astray. I brought a CD-ROM with me today that, unfortunately, only talks to PCs. And what was brought was a Mac laptop. And so, since they're not communicating, we have a problem. So you're not going to have to watch any slides. For the next 15, 20 minutes, you have to watch me. Actually, it'll probably be 40 or 45 minutes. And I will walk around like this to make sure that even the people in the back row don't sleep. So if you try to fall asleep, I will get after you. Like the old Quaker things, you have a feather, and you tickle the woman's nose, and the guys fall asleep. Boom! You hit them on the head with this solid ball. So what I want to do, though, is that I have to get all these things out of my system in order before I can start my talk. 9 days ago, I was in Hong Kong, and I was talking with a fellow named Bruce, who is a Tai Chi, I guess is that the way it is. He does Tai Chi. I mean, everybody does Tai Chi in China. And you walk along and you see them doing all these kinds of things all over the streets, literally. And what really impressed me about him, though, is that he lives on the 31st floor of an apartment building. And he walks those 31 flights every day. And he talks about Tai Chi as being a good exercise, but mostly it's a way of getting prepared, and it's the Chinese martial arts, so that if you want to, you can easily kill somebody. And I'm sure that's not the kind of thing that the Sarah Cannon people want you to be thinking about very much, but that's the kind of thing that happens. You know, I was in Poland when 9/11 happened and traveled on to Czech Republic and Slovakia and into Hungary, and then came back and then had to go off to a meeting in Hiroshima and then on to China, and then went on to Beijing. What I was going to do at 2 o'clock this afternoon was jump on a plane and fly off to India, which is why I'm first rather than the Tai Chi and everything else. Well, I was supposed to go to Istanbul, be there up until 2 days ago. That meeting was canceled. And so I came home about a week ago, 8 days ago, and the meeting that I was supposed to go to in Saudi Arabia was canceled. And since I was using the meeting in Saudi Arabia to pay for my way to India, I had to cancel India. And so I'm not going, I was right. I mean, I want you to know I'm right. I had already canceled Pakistan. I was not going to go to Pakistan. But anyway, so it turns out that I have to go anyplace. So, you know, Sally said I can talk for all afternoon, and we have some fun. And so we will go on, and if you get hungry, just, you know, sneak through that glass door over there and bring back a muffin, and you can probably survive until the end of. Let me tell you though, the talk that I was going to give, and this is a variation on it, was how the mind hurts and heals the body. How the mind hurts and heals the body. Yeah.
I'm deaf.
Oh,
Okay.
you too.
And with your head that way, I
I
what you
know, I
said.
want to make sure. You know, I'll give you one of my hearing aids, but that way I have also. No,
Whatever
no.
you said, basically.
I will make sure that I know, you know.
How the mind helps the girl heals the body.
Oh, okay, thank you.
You know, but anytime I don't throw things at me, give her something soft to throw because I lose. I'm very concerned about that. But what I want you to do is appreciate, and you know, I'm going to ask you to do one thing. I should go to that corner right there, because that way I can, you know, kind of go this way, and you're not going to be too far away. If you can't hear me, I'll use the microphone, but I think you can probably hear me without it.
Those 2 pages.
Okay. Now, this talk that I give, How the Mind Hurts and Heals the Body, I tried to think of a jazzy title of it for India, because I wanted to do something that was very appropriate for the people in India. And so I changed the title. I didn't change the talk, I added 2 slides, but you're not going to see them anyway. Psychostasis, Ancient Wisdom, and Modern Research. I want you to realize a couple of things. One is, we're not going to talk about cutting-edge research. What we do is something even more important. We're going to talk about cutting-edge concepts. We're going to talk about the power of the mind. We're going to talk about how the brain is very elastic, and what I'm going to do is stretch your brain. And it'll never go back the same, I hope. And so I want you to realize that the mind is one of the most powerful things we have in modern science. And you all know about the power of the mind. Now, the power of the mind is not something ephemeral floating up here 12 inches above your skull. The mind is nothing more and nothing less than the operation of the brain. So when you change your mind, you're changing your brain. When you change your brain, you're changing your body. Because the brain is the body's first line of defense against disease, against illness, even, as you'll see, against death. And so realize that the mind is a very powerful thing. You know about placebos. Placebos work in 25% of the times it's used. In some cancer treatment things, placebos even make hair fall out. Because people know when you're in chemotherapy, your hair is supposed to fall out. And even when you have a placebo, the hair falls out. You know about the power of the mind with hypnosis and how it controls pain and other things. So you have to appreciate that we're talking here not about something that is, you know, pure magic. This is real, it works. I want you to realize that it works many, many ways. I think I'm not even going to hand out any of these because I will just confuse the issue with some people having them and other people not having them. I was going to start off with a very nice quotation from Robert Ader. Now, you don't know Robert Ader, but Robert Ader is a psychologist who about 20 years ago showed it was possible to condition the immune system. And that was magnificent. Because up until that time, we had the nervous system, we had the endocrine system, we had the immune system, and people thought the immune system was something separate and wasn't involved with the rest of the systems in controlling the body. But he showed that you can, just as you can train a dog to salivate when they ring a bell, you can train the immune system to be depressed or enhanced. So the immune system became part of this whole pattern that we're involved in now in treating many, many illnesses. We're going to talk about a whole bunch of them. Now, the things that I want you to realize is why I was talking about, ancient wisdom and modern research. I've got a beautiful quote, which I will give you, and I'm going to get it down here so I can do these things reasonably. An alteration in the state of the soul produces an alteration in the form of the body, and contrariwise, an alteration in the bodily form produces an alteration in the state of the soul. I think you know that philosopher. His name is Aristotle. That was a couple of thousand years ago. And he knew then that it was this interaction between the mind and the body. He called it the soul, but essentially that. But what I added for India, I said, look, who cares about people like Aristotle? I want to tell you about a real philosopher. And I'll show you the picture of her, my grandma. Because it's my grandma that gave me most of these basic wisdoms, these basic ideas, and grandma's health beliefs. And I've written a book on it, which is still in the process of going together, and Sally will get all that back to you sometime. But let me tell you what these grandma's health beliefs are, because that's what the essence of this talk is going to be. One is you can worry yourself sick. You can. Second one is get it out of your system, you'll feel better. See, all these are things that I learned from my grandma. And she used those phrases with me. Good friends mean good health. If you grew up the way I did, surrounded by lots of good friends and a good family, what you find is that every Sunday afternoon you got in the car and you took a drive, a Sunday drive. I don't do that anymore. My wife is one of those people who doesn't do it anymore. She says, "Why don't you sit fighting?" I'm not pure nut. But it's one of those things, it's right, better than she gets into heroin addiction, better she's fighting an addiction. Well, you can die of a broken heart. There's another one of the things that, in fact, is a true statement that my grandma used to say. But then what's important to all of us here, cancer survivors, the will to live is an important part of staying alive. The able to support that. This is not just something my grandma said. This is not just something that people like to think about. It's real. So what I want to do is tell you about this area of research. And I asked my good friend Dr. Salsa to come because we were having lunch 2 days ago, and he was saying, well, I'm moving over into this. So I said, yeah, I'm moving into a new area. I'm moving into an area that I've been working with. And he didn't know it, and I didn't know he was in it, and he didn't know I was in it. And so he came. But this is the science of psycho, endo, neuro, immunology, the interaction of the psyche, the mind, our thoughts, with the endocrine system, the nervous system, and the immune system. This is what makes it all work. And so what we're going to do is kind of go through and talk about some data and how all these things come together. But before I do that, I want to give you a perspective. I want to let you know why we got ourselves into the situation we got ourselves in. Let's go back to somebody whose name you know, another philosopher, physician, Hippocrates. Hippocrates said many great things. One of the things that I think we need to remember is that he said it's more important to know the patient who has the disease than it is to know the disease that the patient has. Good physicians today focus first on the patient, not on the disease. And then you can begin to move somebody toward health. Well, about 300-400 years after Hippocrates was alive, and actually my wife and I had the happy time of going to the island of Kos, where he was born and preached and did all kinds of good things in Greece. Beautiful country. But soon after that, about 200 AD, a philosopher physician by the name of Galen made an observation. The observation was that 80% of the people who come into his office are unable to be helped by any of the medicines that they have or by the approach that medicine had. Things haven't changed. In 1991, there was an article in a journal of medical education in which they said that when people come into a general medical clinic, only 11% can be helped by modern medicine. You see, I know that. You have to realize, I mean, I'm a very bright person, but it doesn't come across, but I am, But I used to work at the VA, and Roger Dupre, who was the chief of medicine, and he came and he grabbed me one time, and he said, Oakley, I need to talk to you. And I said, hey, buy me a cup of coffee, and I'll talk to anybody. If I'm salad, I got to get you coffee. I'm cheap. You got to realize that. So, sat down and he said, Oakley, 9 out of 10 people who come into the VA outpatient clinic, my boys, and he meant his residents, can't help. I said, I know that. He said, what do you mean? And I told him all the studies showing that when people go to a hospital, why do they go to a hospital? Why do they walk into an outpatient clinic? You say, well, it's because they're sick. No. At least 8 out of 10 go into a hospital, into an outpatient clinic, and say, well, doctors, tell me you care about it. Listen to them. See, it used to be you didn't have to worry about it. You grow up, you're on the farm, and you got all these kids around you, and lots of relatives. Extended family is a real thing. But today, who do you have to talk to? So they've done studies. People come in, somebody checks the door. Usually an RN, clinical nurse specialist, will do something like check all of the vital signs, including, if you just added as a vital sign, in the last couple of years, pain. No one ever thought about pain as a vital sign. But it really is, so that if you had a lot of pain, you don't feel very good if you got a lot of pain, and you can never recover. And so the best physicians know that not only do they have to make sure that your heart keeps going, and you're breathing, and your blood pressure stays down, but you don't have any pain. Then you begin to think about, how do I get back, get my life together? Well, so these sorts of things I think are important. And what they find is somebody comes in, and they say, fine, they're not going to die in the next half hour. So you say, we'll let you talk to somebody. Who do they talk to? It doesn't matter who you talk to. They can talk to Gerald Pike, a friend of mine, drives trucks. And, he says, God, gee, I could not be as good as he's just a lovable person. And he could just, say, hey, what brings you to the hospital? Somebody says, well, and they go on and they talk for half an hour. Anybody who's going to listen and hear. And after that, they say, okay, well, I think I have all the information I need. We'll let you go see the doctor. You know what happens? Half of the people don't even want to go see the doctor. They say, no, I don't need to see the doctor now. I'll go home. The half who do go see the doctor, they take less medicine. They're hospitalized for less time. See, none of that should surprise anybody in this room. In fact, do you want to decrease the amount of time that somebody spends in the hospital after surgery? Think about it. All you do is one thing. The night before surgery, the surgeon, hi, I'm Oakley Ray. I'm the surgeon. I'm going to operate on you tomorrow, and I just want to let you know that I'm here and I'm very positive about what's going to happen. You have any concern? Well, you do that. And what happens? People leave the hospital 2 or 3 days early. My wife and I put myself in that group, euphemistically, had 4 children. And I remember the 4 children. Michelle Moore, who's over there with a baby sitting next to her, she had her baby, 8 days ago? 9 days ago. And, 9 days back when Kathy had hers, she still like, ah! Well, is there that much difference between my wife and Michelle? Yeah. Differences up here, differences in the treatment, in the medicine. Now, for my grandchildren, if I don't get to the hospital within about 20 hours of the birth, I can't see the child in the hospital. I walk in, and they say, oh, she was discharged 3 hours ago. The whole thing, you have to understand, that's up here. Now, some of the laws and all that other kind of helping. Big thing is up here. Well, we can come back and talk about it. But anyway, I was just telling you all of that, which I don't usually tell, but now I have these slides. See, the slides supposed to be long. See, that's why I said we'll be here all afternoon. The next person who came along was somebody you may remember, René Descartes. René Descartes was a philosopher, did a great thing for science and for Western civilization. What he did was think about it, and he said, there's the soul and there's the body, and he thought they interacted with the pineal gland and the brain. But he said, these are two separate things. And he told the Catholic Church, because it's two separate things, it's all right for people to study the body because they're not having any effect on the soul. The Catholic Church said, fine. And science moved ahead. That was important. But what it also did was separate the soul, the mind, and the body. Well, we made some great advances. Louis Pasteur, the guy who invented milk, you remember him. What he did, he believed in the germ theory of disease. If you have a germ, you have the disease. If you don't have a germ, you don't have the disease. One of his colleagues, contemporaries, not as famous, Claude Bernard, he should be. He was a person who believed in the internal milieu. You may remember that from your high school biology. Internal milieu. He said, it's not just the germ that's important. It's the body that's important too in development of disease. Well, I haven't grown up on a farm, and I believe that. Some of you may have grown up on a farm or at least thought about it. It's not just enough to have a seed. You got a plant. You have to have receptive soil. That's what Claude Bernard was saying. He says, it's not the seed, it's not the soil, it's how they get together. It's how they get together that's important. And so what we're doing now with psycho-endo-neuroimmunology is beginning to bring together the body and the mind and how they interact. And so one of the things we're going to do is work our way through many studies. But let me just tell you one thing before I jump into the very first study. If you don't have a background in medicine, you probably don't appreciate the fact that there are a whole bunch of factors that determine whether or not you get an infection. And then there's another whole bunch of factors that determine whether or not you become ill. These are two different things. You go into school-age kids, and you're going to do swabs. And probably, in a normal fall, 20% of these students are going to have the bacteria for a strep throat in there. But only about 1% are going to have strep throat. So you can be infected and not be ill. That's an important thing to remember. And not only that, as you'll see in a minute, there are differences. Increases the probability of becoming infected, the probability of becoming ill. Well, if you have grown up, as most of us have, with, nice loving parents, they tell you got to get your sleep, you got to do this, you got to do that, because you got to keep the resistance up so you don't get a cold. If you do get a cold, it's because resistance is down, or you eat too much junk food, or you're watching bad television, or on and on and on. Depends upon, what they want to be against. That's whatever the problem is. Well, I want you to realize that no one ever did much about this until a guy named Sidney Cohen at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh came up with a magnificent study. It's a classic study, just a real classic. And I guess I have to share one with you because I have to tell you about Leonard Sagan. You probably never read The Health of Nations. Most people have it. It's out in print now, which is unbelievable. Leonard Sagan is an epidemiologist, physician, author. And all I wanted to do, what he did was study the causes of illness over many centuries and in many countries. I want to give you one quote because it's probably what I want you to walk away with if nothing else. The history of rapid health gains in the United States is not unique. The rate at which death rates have fallen is even more rapid in more recently modernized countries. The usual explanations for this dramatic improvement, better medical care, nutrition, or clean water, provide only partial answers. More important is the rise of hope and the decline in despair and hopelessness. More important is the rise of hope and the decline in despair and hopelessness. Now, you may or may not believe that, And I can't show you the slide, unfortunately, but let me tell you what this says. This is the fall in the standard death rate for 9 common infectious diseases in relation to specific medical measures in the United States, 1900 to 1973. Measles started to decrease in incidence. About 1910, we got a vaccine for it, 1981. Scarlet fever started to fall in 1910. Penicillin, 1941. Pneumonia started to fall in 1900, and we had, some of the sulfa drugs in the 1930s. And I can go on. The important thing is the incidence of each one of these diseases, infectious diseases, fell off before modern medicine had anything to do about it. And the question is why? How did that happen? What happened? Well, we could go off and I could get back and spend another whole day tomorrow. We'll do it tomorrow, Sunday. Don't forget, plan to be back tomorrow at 9 o'clock, and we'll go through the changes that happened. But the big thing that happened back around 1900 in this country was everybody's attitude changed. A lot of hope, a lot of optimism. It's a bright new world. Take care of ourselves. This was the land of opportunity. A lot of things happen. You want to decrease the birth rate in countries? Easiest way to do it. Increase the standard of living. Increase the opportunities. Matter of fact, one of the problems you may or may not know is that people are so happy and so optimistic and so decrease in birth rate that many of the Western countries are not producing enough children to maintain their population. The United States population, if it weren't for immigration, would have fallen off by about 10% in the last 10 years because so many people aren't married, so many people are married, aren't having babies. I'm just happy to Michelle and Phil, and tell him I'm the one who called him at 6 this morning. See, I forgot to tell her that. I was trying to send her a fax to tell her how to get here, and she said she's going to put her fax machine on. So I'm up on such a rush. Well, I'll send it off to Michelle. I couldn't send it last night. And before I thought about it, I had to shut the stop button. And then I thought, golly, that was Phil. I have to apologize to her for it was my fault. Because she didn't put the machine on. It wasn't my fault, it was her fault. No, the important thing is, you gotta have it. The world did change around 1900. And it's still changing. And we have to think about what the impact of those things is. Well, I want to give you, and I don't have a blackboard here, but one of the things I'll do is, I'll get all of your names, I'm serious, from Sally, and I'll send you these 2 pages that I want to talk about. Because I want to talk about stress. And what is stress and how do you handle stress? Stress basically results when you have demands in the environment that you either experience or you think are there. And that's the thing I want you to underline. Remember, the critical thing is not what's out there in the world. The critical thing is what's up here in the mind. And some people, everyone laughed or talked or thought about my motorcycle. See, for some people, riding a motorcycle is very stressful. Definitely. It's the most positive thing in the world, next to a whole bunch of other things that people. But I really enjoy it. And I'm planning a lot of motorcycle rides. And is it dangerous? Yeah. But what is it? You have to decide. See, and so the danger is not out there, the danger is up here. Now, a trailer truck runs me down, okay, yeah, that's out there. The important thing is how you see things. So what I want to do is talk a little bit about coping skills and environmental demands. But the environmental demands are how you see them, not what's really there. I want to talk about 4 kinds of coping skills. One of them that I talk about is knowledge. One of the best health habits you can have is more education. Now, we can't measure knowledge, but we can measure education. The more education you have, the less likely you are to die at any age of anything. And so, Dr. Sulzer got an MD degree from Switzerland. He's living a long life. He's 120 years old now. You wouldn't believe it from one guy. That kind of thing. So, you have to understand. So you want to do things in society? Increase a level of education. Second thing, these coping skills, inner resources, inner resources. This is not knowledge about the world, but how do you see the world? Knowledge about the world is important. There's a glass filled to the midline with water, and you've all had somebody do that to you. They say, well, there's a glass half full or half empty. How do you see the world? How do you see the world? See, I grew up in the kind of home where the glass was always half full, and I knew it was going to fill up and spill over. I grew up in the kind of family, the kind of home, where when my mother wanted to tell me something, I came home early, and one of the things that my wife did, she's a superb cook, but she cooks every night. But I came home and then I'm sitting down and I said, what do you have for supper? And I was kidding her because I knew it was going to be soup. And she said, soup. And I knew that. But then for dessert, she had baked an apple pie from scratch. The whole thing. Well, my mother used to make tapioca pudding. And I really loved tapioca pudding. And so she would do the tapioca pudding bit. She put a maraschino sugar, I don't know. I tell you that because I wonder how I look at the world. And I would eat the tapioca pudding. Critical thing, you don't just lick the spoon after you're finished. Lick it after every spoonful. Because it's always good to get the last bit. Why did I do it once? Why did I do it 10 or 12 times? And then maraschino sugar. Everything, you got to maximize it. You got to maximize it. And you got to reach out. And so this is the inner resources. How do you see the world? I can give you a whole bunch more of them that we talk about. Third thing that's important in developing your coping skills, social support system. Your social support system. Good friends do mean good health. Good friends mean good health. And so what you need to do is understand that the more friends you have and more interactions you have with them, the better your health is going to be. And I'll even show you some good data on that issue. Last but not least, 10, 15 years ago, no one would talk about this, but now we're talking about it more and more, and more studies. Spirituality. Not religious, spirituality. See, I'm one of those people who's very fortunate, and I think God does make house calls, like plumbers and electricians and other people. I don't go to church. Probably better if I did, but I don't. But God does make house calls. And I don't care whether you believe in God or not, but I think the important thing is you got to believe in something beyond yourself. You got to realize that at some point in your life, at some point in the things you do, you're just a little God. Just a little God. And you see this kind of selflessness in many, many things, and everyone is always going back to, New York, and I happened to watch one of the TV news things last night, and you see the selflessness of people when they were risking their own lives to save people. That's a kind of spirituality. A realization that you're not the most important thing in the world. That there's something more than you, or maybe it's other people, maybe it's other situations. But all of those things, you put them together, and then you balance them. Well, when you balance your coping skills with the demands of the environment, that's when you reach what I call psychostasis. You all know about homeostasis. Homeostasis, your temperature goes up and then the body kicks in things to lower your body temperature, goes down and kick in to raise it. Psychostasis is maintaining psychological equilibrium. That's the key. That's the kind of thing that we're talking about. If we had time, we could elaborate it in a great deal. But I want to go back to that study that I told you about. I started before I jumped off into those other things by Cohen. Stress and respiratory illness. He did a great study about 11 years ago. What he did was take a group of volunteers in their 20s and 30s, quarantine them. After 3 days, he goes around and checks who has an upper respiratory illness, a common cold. And what he did then was take the people who didn't have any colds, the rest of them got out, got rid of them. He took 5 different viruses, different virus for each one of these people, and scored up their nose. Questions now. And how many of these people does the virus grow? How many people became infected? Second thing, how many people developed illness? Well, before he put anybody into this experiment, he measured their level of stress 3 ways. I'm going to tell these to you because I'll give you an algorithm then, and I'll send a copy of that to you and get all the names. Or emails, we can email it to you. Perceived stress, the degree to which an individual feels able to cope with current life demands. You ever cope with everything that's coming in? Somebody's a piece of cake. Okay. Second, the negative affect. The degree to which an individual feels unhappy or anxious about himself or herself. Some of it is liking you or not liking yourself. And then finally, stressful life events. The number of major stressful events experienced by the individual in the past year. And these range all the way from childbirth, a positive thing, to death of a spouse, death of a relative, bankruptcy, I mean, pick anything. All these things that are out there. So I think that differentiation between the things that are inside, how do you feel about yourself, and can you deal with the world, that's strictly here. But these negative life events, these critical life events, things that are out there, what happens is that these first two, perceived stress and negative affect, more those show up, more likely it is that you're going to become infected. More likely it is you're going to become infected if there are viruses in the environment. But that doesn't mean you're going to develop the illness. It showed very clearly that the critical thing, whether or not you develop the illness once you're infected, is critical life events, things out there. So we separated these kinds of things. Move over more, move over more. Go over, lean back against the wall. Television, not vision. I'm just like napping back on the wall down, on the side, all this kind of. But anyway, the important thing is, there's a big relationship between the amount of stress in your life and the probability of infection and illness. Some people have done a magnificent study, and I'll just tell you quickly through it. They monitor the immune system of medical students all year long. And what happens? Exams come along, the immune system doesn't work as well. And what happens when it doesn't work as well? The incidence of upper respiratory illness, common cold, goes up. The exam is over, the immune system goes back to normal, the illnesses go away, and they go along. Next exam, the same. So they show the relationship between stress, the immune system, and illness. Well, you can use this in your own life to make sure that you do certain things at certain times. And what you do is you build up, not directly your immune system, but what you do is build up those good things that happen. I don't have time here either to talk about what you do, but one thing you do is you reduce the amount of stress in your life. One is by how do you see things up here. The other thing you want to do is build up the number of good things in your life. I wrote a book many years ago, which I talk about. Everyone should have certain things they can do anytime, just to feel good. Well, I used to have a garage, and I just wanted to death. And it was a horrible mess. I knew that I could feel good anytime I wanted to. All I had to do was go down and begin organizing and clean up the garage. I felt so good. My garage is clean. I stayed that way for about 3 days. I didn't get it. Because God sends in these people to mess up things that you already made. That same thing happening. The important thing is we need to be able to get some good things out of life. Got to maximize these sorts of things. Well, let me tell you about one, getting it out of your system, not only grandma's. And I remember this so vividly. My grandma lived about 20 miles from where I lived. And I used to go see her once in a while on weekends, on a Saturday. I get my pocket, pedal along, one speed then, one speed. It was back at the turn of the century, and the Spanish-American War was just over, and I'm on a one-speed bike going out to see Grandma. Well, I got there, and I would go in, and she would kitchen table, typical kind of thing, oilcloth on it. You may remember oilcloth, and oilcloth. Sugar cookies, milk, the whole bit. And one day I got out there, and I was just so mad, I pedaled like crazy, got out there, and I sat down, and she gave me my sugar cookies, big, beautiful sugar cookies, and milk. And she could tell I was irritated. So she finally said, heaven's sakes, get it out of your system, boy, you'll feel better. And I did. Tell you an important thing. This is a psychologist out at Southern Methodist University who's made a cottage industry out of studying that. And he's monitored the immune system and doing all kinds of things. When you get out, you probably all know about is by a good friend of mine, David Spiegel. David Spiegel took a group of women with metastatic breast cancer, and they all had, this is not a standard, they all had the best kind of treatment possible. Radiation, chemotherapy, some had surgery. Then you divide them into two groups. Same medical treatment, one group, once a week, for 90 minutes, 1 year. They met, talked about their illness. They all knew they were terminal. They all know that they were going to die. Think about it, those kind of groups are very supportive, which is what they're supposed to be. Because when somebody dies, you think, golly gee, I'm going to miss her because she was a nice person. And she did this and she did that. And you begin to realize, you know, when I die, they will say nice things about me too. I'll be missed. I'm an important person to these people in my group. Well, no one knows exactly what it was, but we do know that even though this only lasted for 1 year, 90 minutes, once a week, the people who were in that group with the talking treatment, they lived, on the average, twice as long as the people who didn't get that kind of treatment. You say, well, you know, there are other studies. Did a study in the UK. Again, women with metastatic breast cancer. They had a diagnosis, had the surgery. 3 months after the diagnosis and the surgery, which is very close together, they went in and interviewed them. Well, now that you've been diagnosed with cancer, you had surgery, how do you feel about what happened? Well, they categorized the responses in 5 different categories. One group, Fighting Spirit, said, well, I had cancer, but I'm going to beat it. It's not going to get me down. Another group said, I never had cancer. They cut off my breast, but I never had cancer. They just denied that they had cancer. Another group, you know, well, I had cancer, but I'm afraid it's going to come back. You know, they're concerned about it coming back again. And then the other groups, and when he said, she said, hey, once you have cancer, what do? You do. 2 groups out of the 5 that survived 10 years for the people with fighting spirits, the people who deny they had cancer. Denial is a very important psychological thing. It's very good for you if it offers hope. Because I think that's the key. And no one has studied that. That's my idea. We do know with AIDS patients, if you accept the prognosis, if you accept the diagnosis, yes, I have AIDS, and the prognosis, which 10 years ago was the following, you're going to die in the next 6 months. If you accept both the diagnosis and the prognosis, you die in 6 months. But if you said, yes, I have AIDS, but I'm going to die, they live much longer. It's that one change in your thought pattern that changed your brain, that changed your body's chemistry, your immune system. See, we still don't know how it happens or why it happens, and people were beginning to study it, but now, of course, we handle AIDS and people don't die quite the way they used to, fortunately, in this country anyway. The important thing is that you can have an impact just by your thought patterns, just by your thought patterns. Well, a whole bunch of other studies, you know, in addition to those, but let's go on to another one of Grandma's health habits. Good friends mean good health. I can do that pretty quick because you all know that that's true. They did a very famous study, the Alameda County study. Ran for 9 years, 6,000 people. And they asked them very simple questions. At the beginning, are you alive? Yes, they were all alive. And, do you smoke? Are you overweight? What do you eat? All these kinds of things. And then they did nothing else but follow the people for 9 years. What they find is that over this 9-year period, people, if they were overweight, they died sooner. If they smoked, they died sooner. If they drank too much, they died sooner. If they had a bad diet, they died sooner. If they had some illness at the beginning, they died sooner. All those kinds of things. But then they controlled for those. None of those things were variable. They asked one question. What's the relationship between somebody dying and the number of friends they have? They monitor friends in several ways. Friends, we usually have friends. Family interaction with your family and relatives. People you do things with at work, people you do things with in the community. And so they got the different score. What they find, this is people who have more connections, close connections, live longer, no matter what their age or what their sex. Now, women, as you know, live longer than men. And I could get off and tell you lots of reasons for that, some funny and some not so funny and some realistic. But women usually live longer. As you know, the probability of dying increases as you get older, at least up until your age 90. After that goes down, and you should come back and talk about that sometime. The important thing here is that when you're young, and I don't see anybody in this room except for Dr. Seltzer and myself who was over the age of 25. And so I have bad vision. Don't get one, I don't see one either. But the important thing is, when you're very young, how many friends you get doesn't really have an impact on the likelihood of dying. Because your immune system is so good without anything else. But the older you get, the more important it becomes to have good friends. As a matter of fact, it's so strong in people above the age of 60 that some people said what we should do is monitor people above the age of 60, and if they don't have friends, the government should provide friends. That's not funny. That's not funny. Maybe it is. But you think about it. See, I was out in Stanford giving with my slides and all this kind of stuff, ran around all the psychiatrists and presidents sitting there, and after it was over, somebody said, Dr. Ray, I hear what you're saying about friends and things like that, and how can I get my patients to have more interactions with people? And I said, you have a prescription pad? She says, yeah. I said, what do you write on? He said, oh, prescription for drugs. That's why a prescription for interpersonal relationships. See 2 people, spend 3 hours talking to them each time, come back and see me next week. Don't do it. You do what a doctor tells you to do. So you sit down and talk to people. It's that kind of thing. You understand. Just get people going. You never get turned on. You begin to get involved and do all these sorts of things. Well, it's a true statement. And as a matter of fact, when you get above the age of 65, people with lots of friends die at about half the rate of people who don't have any friends at all. And so you want to have as many friends as you can, and you want to increase the number of friends you have as you get older. The slide is actually pretty dramatic if you look at it. But not only does having lots of friends help you to live longer, but it can protect you. You all heard about Type A personality, Type B personality. Type A personality is a hard-driving, hostile, cynical, rigorous kind of person that is prone to have a heart attack. And then there's the people who are living young and young and young, people, the Type B people. Don't worry about it. My wife thinks I'm a Type B person. She says, Buddy, when are you going to fix this? I said, tomorrow we'll get to it. We'll get to it. Well, what happens? But in 10 years after having a heart attack, the Type A people who are socially isolated, they die at about, here it is, 65%, versus the Type B personality within 10 years, they're dead after their first heart attack, about 45%. But if in fact they have lots of friends, there ain't no difference. And so what it means is you can be an SOB. If you have lots of friends, you can protect against all those bad aspects of your personality. So, there's hope for some of you. Dying of a broken heart. I remember my mother talking about this, well, so-and-so died of a broken heart. And you figure it's a gobbledygook kind of thing, but it's not. It's real. Even the government, the U.S. government, admits that it's real. Not only does mortality increase in males in the first 6 months after the death of a spouse, but about 60% of the deaths are caused by cardiovascular problems. For males, not for females, but for males, probably the very best health habit you can have is to be married. I tell people, my students, I said, look, if my wife predeceases me, that's how you say die before you go. If my wife predeceases me, as they lower her into the ground, I'm sitting like this, looking around, who's available? I'm going to spend that night alone. You say, horrible. No. Best health habit you can have. If you can't find somebody to marry, move in with somebody. Or have somebody move in with you. For guys, it's important. They did a very great study in which they looked at the relationship between death of a spouse and mortality. And it's amazing. For guys at all ages, in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, at all ages, within a 6 month period, after the death of a wife, the people who are widowers, their mortality rate is about 30% higher than perfectly matched people whose wife is still alive. Same income, same education, same geographical area. Now what's most interesting is that when you look at wives whose husbands die, and you compare mortality of those whose husbands didn't die and those whose husbands did die, there is zero difference. Zero difference. Women don't give a damn whether their husband dies. My wife won't discuss that issue with me. But I did talk with Paula Clayton, who was a friend of mine, she was a psychiatrist at the University of Minnesota, and she's the one who did some of these studies. And I said, Paula, does it bother women at all when their husbands, oh yes, okay, it bothers them a lot. I said, well, tell me, how does it bother them? Well, they have more headaches. They don't sleep as well. I said, the day of them dies, she says, don't be silly. No. But you think about it, see, men are so much more dependent on women than they are on men. And I think it probably has to do with the fact that along about 12 or 13 or 14, the menstrual cycle kicks in, and you're very much, see, women have an internal gyroscope. We know this is true with men, that they don't. I mean, elderly men in nursing homes, you move the men from one room to another, mortality rate goes way up. You move women from one room to another, no effect at all. Men are much more affected by the environment. And so this dying of a broken heart is true for men, not for women.